So, with Sony supposedly wrapping up their Sony universe of Marvel characters, we're able to end it on a high note when it comes to Kraven the Hunter. Let's break it down in the latest episode of SuperBeard Reviews. So, when it comes to Sony and their movies based around the Spider Man universe, but without Spider Man, there's been some trepidation and some, well, misses. Mostly misses. Almost all misses. But as they supposedly are wrapping up this universe and deciding to move in a different direction, were they able to, at least with their final film, Kraven the Hunter, end on a high note? In a word, meh. So, this film to me was very important. When it comes to Kraven the Hunter, he is not only my favorite Spider Man villain, but he's actually just my favorite comic book villain of all time. He is a dynamic, complex character with motivations outside the typical let's rob banks, or let's cause chaos, or let's murder everybody and take over the world. His motivation is more about just being the absolute best, being the greatest hunter of all time. And there are family dynamics involved and everything else, but he's a very complex character. And I think one of the greatest Spider-Man stories of all time, if not the greatest, is the Spider-Man The Last Hunt storyline. That being said, I had both high hopes for this movie and a lot of fear. Sony's track record is abysmal at best. And if Marvel is not directly involved, like with Kevin Feige and the MCU, they've really missed the mark. The first Venom film is fun, but not great, but it's fun. And it's something I've watched multiple times because it's just fun. The second one has some more issues, but still isn't bad. But then when you get into Morbius, Madam Web, Venom the Last Dance, they're just bad. They're awful. Like Madam Web might be one of the worst movies made in the 21st century. It's just awful. So there was a lot of fear going into Kraven the Hunter. And quite frankly, Sony does what Sony does, and they kind of failed us once again. So in case you didn't figure it out already, there will be spoilers ahead for the film. We're going to take a deep dive into this movie, but that's going to be kind of hard when there's not a lot to dive into. Now, Sony decided to make this one an R-rated film, which I think was important for the character, but it also serves no purpose whatsoever in this movie. The only good thing I can't even say good. The only reason for it to be rated R is so that one of the characters can drop, the F-bomb, 15, 16 times in the movie, and there's some extra blood. But the reality is, I don't think any of the actual fight scenes or gore in this movie even truly qualifies it as an R-rated film, except for maybe how many times we get blood splatter. That might have been enough to knock it up there. And then, of course, they went over the maximum of 3 F-bombs in a PG-13 movie rule. So that is really the only reason it's R-rated. So there's kind of strike one. My main issue with the film, though, is that it's kind of pointless. There's no purpose to anything that happens in this film. It's a bad script. It felt like this script was a stepping stone to a sequel. Everything about this movie is trying to set up a Kraven the Hunter universe. It's trying to set up a sequel for the film and establish other characters for future projects versus focusing on this movie. Firstly, one of the signs of a film's death is releasing the first 8 minutes on YouTube randomly at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Monday. And that's what Sony did. The opening prison scene in Russia is out there on YouTube for everyone to watch, and that's never a good sign. And again, the action in that, a lot of what happens in the movie doesn't feel like it has a purpose. None of the fight scenes have a purpose. They just happen. The action doesn't really have a purpose. The storyline doesn't really dive into Kraven the Hunter that much, even though we have this elongated, almost 20-minute origin story scene that was way too long and kind of nonsensical. It doesn't really explain much. They try to leave these breadcrumbs that more answers will come later in future films. Again, this movie was seemingly established to be sequel bait and nothing more, which is incredibly doubly sad considering that this is now going to be the final film in the Sony universe of Marvel characters, supposedly. Kraven's backstory is not like the comics. It's close to it, and that's something, in all honesty, when it comes to superhero movies, I have no problem with them making changes for the cinematic version. It's a different universe. It's okay. As long as the changes make sense, it's fine. I mean, again, you look at the MCU and you see the changes they've made to characters to bring them to real life, and it's okay. In this case, though, Sony tends to not do that well, and once again, they didn't. In Kraven's case, again, it doesn't explain it's almost a MacGuffin in the fact that the only reason he has the abilities he has, which by the way, his abilities very undefined. Um, he has those abilities due to a magic potion of unexplained origin. What? 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 Um, as it turns out, later on in the movie, you find out that Kraven's trying to figure out what is the secret of this potion. Spoilers, you'd never find out. But luckily, Calypso, the person who gave him the thing, the potion, she has another one. Yay! It's a magical cure-all. It lowers the stakes to zero. We get a little bit of egotism that Kraven thinks he can never be beaten, and then we have two foes that could beat him. Those foes are just one-dimensional. Firstly, we have a character called the Foreigner. If you don't know who the Foreigner is, that's okay. Most people don't. It's a very obscure Spider-Man villain that supposedly has no powers, but yet has powers. Let me explain. So the Foreigner is a character who's like Punisher, but evil. He's an assassin who is peak physical performance, the best assassin in the world, blah, 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 blah. And the one thing he does do is he has the ability to trance people for up to 10 seconds with his eyes. The movie tries to play it off almost like a mutant ability, and that this is some power he has, where in the comics, it was just something he learned how to do. Like he learned hypnosis from Mentalist and became the greatest person to ever do it. And his trance would allow people to think he had powers because he would all of a sudden like teleport to the other side of the room because they were in a trance and they think it was an instantaneous thing, whereas they've been standing there for 10 seconds with a dumb look on their face. In the movie, it's 3 seconds. And again, they play it off like a power. This character did not need to be introduced in this film. This character was not needed in this film. Quite frankly, pointless. But the biggest disappointment were the quote-unquote main villain of the movie, Rhino, and the supporting character, Calypso. Now, for those unaware, Calypso is the person who helps Kraven become superhuman and ends up becoming his wife at times, and they have kids together. And she is a witch doctor. She is a medicine person, a shaman, and uses her potions and stuff, but there is a mystical background to it. That's kind of teased here, but there again, Calypso is completely one-dimensional in this film, completely almost unneeded, and she's literally there to drop F-bombs throughout the film. That is her purpose. And also, by the way, she happens to be a badass with a bow, and that's explained in a throwaway line about archery school in the summer. And then later on, we find out that she lied about that and that she has secrets too that never get explored. What? And then let's get to the meat of the problem, the Rhino. Now, honestly, aesthetically, I actually like the direction they took the Rhino in visually. I wish he'd have been bigger, but I like that it was a scientific side effect to a medication. In this version of the Rhino, Alexei, the character, is a sickly person. He's not very well, but he is a kind of mob boss in a way, kind of a cartel boss. And he wants to be more powerful. He hears of this doctor in New York who's able to increase strength, and it's kind of like a Dr. Warden, I believe is the name. And it is a comic book character, but I didn't get a chance to look him up. But as a side effect of this experiment to make him stronger, his skin starts to harden like a rhino, and he grows horns, but it's incredibly painful. So he keeps this suppressor medication on his back and hooked into him to keep him from turning. But when he takes it off, he almost instantly turns into the rhino. That was interesting, but again, the character honestly has no growth, no dimension to him. And then the fact that he has this one glaring weak spot thanks to the port where the medicine goes. And again, he's dead. He's like the Rhino, a key Spider-Man villain, is now dead in this universe. Granted, this universe seems to be dead, but I digress. When the film was being made, that wasn't the plan. So to just kill off the Rhino is insane. And again, it was all very pointless. I would say that the shining spots of this movie, because I don't want to keep, just shitting on this film, but I think Aaron Taylor Johnson was a great choice for Kraven. It's just a bad script. So that's not his fault. But the true highlight of the movie is Russell Crowe as Sergei Kravenov, their father. Boy, does he just nail that terrible father, warlord kind of character, misogynistic alpha male character. His role with Sergei is great. On the flip side, like I said, remember how I talked about how this is kind of like a sequel bait film? The teases for Chameleon, I think, are done very well. Dimitri Kraven's half brother, who is the Chameleon in the comics, I think is done very, very well throughout the film. If I had any hope of a sequel, Building to the Chameleon was done very well. All in all, this movie has a lot of faults. The action is pointless. The fight scenes aren't done very well. Special effects are fine. It actually feels practical for a lot of it, which is nice. So that's done well. Visually, it's okay. But the fact that we build to this, it's all building to a sequel that's never going to happen, sucks. And it's a waste of, again, what I feel is the greatest comic book villain of all time. That being said, between the Spider-Man 2 game on PS5 and this movie, we have established Kraven in the lexicon of modern media. So let's leave this on a high note, Sony. Let Marvel do its thing. You've already got Tom Holland signed on for 3 more Spider-Man movies. Get through this one that's coming up. That's going to be in between Doomsday and Secret Wars for Marvel. And then in either the 5th or 6th Spider-Man movie, give us Kraven the Last Hunt. Let Kevin Feige help. Let him help you pick writers. Let him help you guide your hand through this. But a Kraven's The Last Hunt storyline done with Tom Holland Spider-Man could be exceptional. Coming out of what's going to happen in Spider-Man 4, which is supposedly a multiversal story, there's a good chance we're going to get back to a grounded street-level Spider-Man. A Spider-Man that's going to still make headlines and be a target for the world's greatest hunter. The guy who can, even hunting men has gotten boring. So now he has to hunt super people, metahumans. And Spider-Man is that target. So an older Kraven the Hunter, maybe Carl Urban as a casting choice. Or you could age up Aaron Taylor Johnson if you want to, because again, I don't think he's a bad choice. I will say I would prefer a recasting here, though, just to make him older, like I said, a Carl Urban or somebody like that. But give us Kraven's The Last Hunt in either Spider-Man 5 or 6. Sony, I beg of you, please do that. Let me know your thoughts on Kraven the Hunter if you got a chance to see it yet, or if you're even going to go see it. What do you think of Sony's universe of Marvel characters overall? Did you like it? Did you not? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys for the next SuperBeard reviews.